Alright guys, you asked for it. Iris fragrances for men. Now I went through my collection and I pulled out 5 different designers that have iris focused fragrances that are targeted to men, but several of them are on their way out. There's rebranding, discontinuations and things like that, and I'm going to discuss all that to you or with you today. But also I'm going to recommend 6 alternatives to these fragrances if you dig iris or Orris in fragrances and you want to go outside of the designer world and explore some alternatives in the niche world. So if you're curious to learn about these fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. Yes, I'm talking about iris fragrances for men. First of all, we're going to discuss the designers that are targeted to men, and then we're going to discover some unisex options that are from the niche world. And as I was going through and doing a little research on the fragrances, I'm going to feature one from Valentino UOMO Intense. Now that series is kind of discontinued, I believe. They're focusing on Born in Roma and that yellow thing that just came out, which I doubt is iris anymore. None of those, neither of the 2 latter ones are. They have now moved over to L'Oreal. They were under Puig. Same with PRADA. I think PRADA is a little more up in the air as to what's going on with their fragrances. And so will the PRADA L'Homme series of fragrances stick around? I doubt it. I don't know. But there are a few others. I mean, the DIOR series is still around somewhat. The Givenchy series is still around. Tom Ford? No. But either way, I'll let you know what they are and tell you if you need to go search for them because they are kind of on their way out. But, at one point I think these fragrances were, I think, pretty lauded. I really love iris for men. I mean, iris fragrances that are targeted to men. Obviously, they're very unisex offerings, but it was a great note to kind of learn about iris and appreciate this note now that things are kind of changing around. Of course, I've got the 6 alternatives as well, but before I get to all the fragrances, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed, please do click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So how many of you are fans of iris in fragrances? Do you enjoy this note? How many of you that are men think iris is a little too feminine for you? Please put a comment down so I can find out. How many of you don't like the designer world of iris fragrances and appreciate the niche world of fragrances? And what is your favorite iris fragrance? Put a comment down so I can find out. But let's start off with the first one. It's Tom Ford's Noir. Recent rediscovery. I'm glad I bought this. I think it's permanently discontinued. The only one that's existing now in the collection is Noir Extreme, but if you haven't caught my video on the whole series, the 4 different versions, you can go catch that. It's on YouTube right now. But this one actually was a unique take on an iris. It was a musky, patchouli-esque take on iris for men. I think it was a very Tom Ford-esque fragrance and a great fragrance to be in this signature lineup of fragrances. Patchouli, iris, amber, vanilla, rose, civet, leather, black pepper. Lots going on with this one. It was definitely a warm, ambery, oriental style of iris fragrance. And I think it was blended very well and it smelled fantastic, The whole combination was really, really beautiful and I liked its muskiness. And personally, I think it's a little adventurous for the, the mass market for me. That's perhaps why it's discontinued. It's interesting also, if you go catch the video on the 4 different fragrances in this series, the one that's sticking around is probably the easiest to wear version of the fragrance. Noir Anthracite didn't focus on iris, was dead on arrival. The eau de toilette of this obviously was dead on arrival, so Extreme stood the test of time. Although it's been around for 5 years, this one probably about 8 years. Either way, I think it's still a great fragrance. It's different than anything else I'm going to talk to you about. It's a little more risque because of its civet note and the muskiness, but I quite like it. So that's Tom Ford's Noir. If you haven't gotten your nose on it, I recommend it, especially if you like the musky. A little on the musky side. So the next fragrance I'm going to talk to you about the PRADA fragrances, the L'Homme and then L'Homme Intense, Eau de Parfum here and Eau de Toilette here. So this I felt like when it first came out really was kind of like digging into the whole DIOR Homme series of fragrances and not necessarily creating something identical, but definitely something where they were influenced by that particular fragrance. Not necessarily inspired, but definitely influence, I think. It focuses on iris, violet leaves, neroli, geranium, amber, cedar, patchouli, sandalwood. For me, it's a very aromatic iris experience. It's powdery for sure, but in the end, it's very, very aromatic, and I feel like it's definitely on the masculine side, so it definitely does a great job with the composition. The neroli in here is definitely prominent, the geranium is definitely prominent, so you have a beautiful blend of iris, violet, neroli together, and it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. I like it, but it definitely wasn't living up to my favorite DIOR Homme Intense or DIOR Homme Parfum, but it was definitely a decent composition, and I really enjoyed it. When they launched the Intense version in EDP, I felt like now we're kind of getting close to, you know, DIOR Homme Intense and things like that. And then this one's definitely a creamier, a little more oriental, warmer kind of an experience, more intense obviously than the original. And some of the notes are a little more intensified, and they gave us a lot warmer but still powdery version of the original. So I quite like this one. Much more than this, even though I like this one a lot. I think this one's definitely solid. It's the warmer touches that I really, really appreciate, and I enjoy it. So as I said, I don't know how long these are going to stick around, because both Prada and Valentino have moved over to L'Oreal now. They used to be part of Puig. So since Valentino's UOMO series is now changed, I'm assuming these are going to change as well. We shall see. But I recommend these both. Much more this one than this, but both of them are pretty solid. Check them out if you haven't. If you're digging iris and fragrances for men and you want to stick to the designers, I recommend these two, definitely. Next one I'm going to talk to you about is Valentino UOMO Intense. I did not feature UOMO here because according to my research, it doesn't really feature iris. To me, it did remind me of an influenced fragrance from DIOR Homme series. It did, but it focused on more like gourmand notes. But here they do mention that there's iris in the notes. This one is iris, vanilla, leather, tonka beans, clary, sage, mandarin. This one's so good in comparison to the original, and even though the original hinted at the DIOR Homme series of fragrances, more DIOR Homme rather than the Intense and the Parfum, here we got a very, very luxury, warm, rich version of the original, which I really, really quite like. It's a great, great scent. Really kind of a darker version of the original, more concentrated, you know, more intense, but still designer. These darker versions of these fragrances, or the Intenses or the Eau de Parfums, are not necessarily anything like really big fragrances, but I like that they do these stronger versions according to them, more deeper, richer versions, and I quite like this dark one. Sad this is discontinued. It's disappointing. What they've given us now is such a disappointment. I haven't smelled the yellow one, but Born in Roma, oh man, I featured it in a video about regretting buying fragrances. It was just a really, really bad blind buy for that one. It was right during the COVID pandemic, the height of it. But this, absolutely gorgeous. If you can get your hands on it, do get it, because I think it'll be a collector's item once it's completely gone, because what they have now is a disaster. This is definitely something to write home about. So this is Valentino UOMO Intense, a great, great iris fragrance. The other one in the series that came after this focused more on sandalwood, another great offering, a deep, rich, woody, warm experience. I think it was called Noir Absolu, I think that's what it was called. I loved it. Didn't focus on iris, so I did not mention it here. But both this one and that Noir Absolu, I think it's called Noir Absolu, I'm drawing a blank. Both of them are great if you can get your hands on it. I highly recommend it. And the series that I really, really love, I think it's my favorite out of all iris designer fragrances for men, is the DIOR Homme Intense, DIOR Homme kind of lineup of fragrances. I still haven't been able to get my hands on the 100 ml version, and there are so many mixed messages out there. Some people say it's identical to the 75 ml version. Some people say it's so different. I don't know who to believe, so I can't really say what it smells like until I actually put my nose on it. But for now, Dior Homme Intense is a great alternative to Dior Homme Parfum if you can't get it, but it is definitely not as concentrated. It's a lot thinner than the Parfum. The Parfum is really, really thick. It's a heavy, dense experience. The Intense is Eau de Parfum. And again, if you guys don't know concentrations, I have a video on the channel. You can find out more about concentrations. So the Parfum is a lot heavier, has a lot of thicker oils. This is not so much. But I think smells-wise, they're kind of close. Not identical, because in the end, they're kind of inspired from the same series of fragrances. Now, that's the other thing. I don't know what the heck Dior was thinking to change up Dior Homme to a completely different scent, and then leave Dior Homme Intense and Dior Homme Parfum with the iris focus. Because now Dior Homme 2020, or Dior Homme, which is the only one that's around, I think, doesn't feature iris whatsoever. So it's just a weird thing that they've done. Really, really weird. It's confusing. I mean, it's really confusing. According to my research online, they are still selling the original Dior Homme. I haven't been able to find it. Dior Homme 2020 is definitely out there, but I think it's more of a cedar, woody experience. I think it focuses on ambroxan and ISOE Super. But this particular series focuses on iris or orris, ambrette seeds. It's musky, slightly fruity. There's pear, lavender, cedar, vetiver. So there are aromatic touches, but with this one, I think the lavender is removed, and it's more leathery. There's some slight rosy kind of undertones. And I've heard from people say that there might even be oud in here. I don't get the oudiness, but maybe there is. I don't know. I think it's just a leather. It smells like lipstick to me. This series does really do smell like lipstick, whereas the other ones that we spoke about that are focused on iris don't. This one does. Absolutely does. And a lot of you do say this series is kind of feminine. Is it true to you guys? Let me know. Put a comment down. I'm absolutely in love with this series. The smell is just one of the best smells I've ever smelled, whether it's from the designer world, whether it's from the niche world, because it's just a really addictive smell, and I love it. So I recommend this series a lot. And again, I don't know what Dior is doing with this series. They have Dior Homme 2020, which smells nothing like these two. They still have Dior Homme Intense, and according to my research, they have Dior Homme Parfum now in 100 ml, but wouldn't they think they would change it to match the Dior Homme 2020? Because it's confusing. Either way, check these two out if you can. And as soon as I hear or find out about the new 100 ml Parfum, I will keep you guys posted. But the next series I want to talk to you about, and the last from the designer world, is the continuing series from Givenchy. And this is the Gentleman series in the Intense, or the Eau de Parfum. I think it's just called Eau de Parfum. And then the Cologne, which both of them focuses on iris and in different directions. The original Eau de Toilette for me was not a wow fragrance. The Eau de Parfum is. The Cologne is too. The Cologne smells great. And it does feature the iris. The Boisé that came out last year was okay. I still think this is better. But here, in comparison to the Eau de Toilette, which I don't have here, is a lot deeper and richer and a lot warmer and gooier. More resinous, I would say. So this one has orris, vanilla, tolu balsam, patchouli, black pepper, tonka beans, benzoin, lavender. Now, if you've ever compared or smelled This Is Him by Zadig & Voltaire, this kind of does remind me of Zadig & Voltaire's This Is Him because of the vanilla, but you do have the tolu balsam in here, you'd have the orris in here, so it's a little more, I think it's a little more ambery in comparison to This Is Him, but kind of in the same ballpark, because This Is Him is vanilla, sandalwood, incense, grapefruit, and black pepper. This one does have black pepper, so it hints at it, but with more of an powdery touch. But I think this is Nathalie Lorson. She created This Is Him, I believe. I think it's her. I'm drawing a blank right now. But this is a great, great scent. And with the Cologne version, which is not necessarily Eau de Cologne concentration, it's Eau de Toilette. They're calling it Cologne. They're targeting the American market with these colognes, I think. This one goes into a powdery, fresh direction, which smells absolutely fantastic. Really, really, really great smell. Sad it's not very long-lived, but if you have issues with this one, add it, like spray it on top of Molecule 1 or something. It'll give it a little bit of a woody backbone, and it'll intensify the smell a little bit. Not too much, but on its own, I think it's a perfect summer scent. just a little powdery because you have that iris note, and iris always goes powdery. But I recommend these two. I highly recommend these two. Once again, I don't think they're identical to the Dior Homme series, which is my favorite out of all these fragrances, but I think they were definitely influenced from them. Anyway, this is Givenchy Gentleman, the EDP, and then this is the Cologne. Okay, so now we're going to discover a few iris fragrances that are unisex targeted that I recommend in addition to these 5 fragrances we discussed. The first one is Le Labo's Iris 39. So this is a chypre fragrance. You can totally smell the chypre qualities as soon as you put your nose on it. It's just like, it's a recognizable style of perfumery, and it's obvious here, totally. But this is a powdery chypre because it has loads of iris. It's called Iris 39. Iris here, patchouli here, violet here. There's musk. There is a civet note. There's ylang-ylang. There's some ginger. There's some citrusy touches in here and some cardamom, but it smells fantastic. If you like patchouli, definitely going to love this one. If you like chypre, you're definitely going to like this one. I just think it smells like fragrances I've smelled tons of when I was younger in that whole chypre style. But I didn't realize that Le Labo did such great classic inspired fragrances. It does go classic, I have to be upfront about that. But if you don't like classic fragrances, you might not like this one. If you don't like a heavy patchouli scent, you might not like this one, because that's definitely obvious with this fragrance. It's a great powdery fragrance though, focusing on iris. That's Le Labo's Iris 39. I don't know if you guys are fans of it. Do let me know. All of these iris fragrances are unisex. Some lean more masculine, some don't. I think this particular one is more of on the masculine side. This is from the house of Parfums DUSITA. This is Splendiris. Splendiris to me is a Orris violet leaves carrot seed combo. So I've read and studied or learned that carrot seeds are usually or can be substituted in place of orris or iris. So it's a given that they would actually use this note in this fragrance because it complements the iris or orris in this fragrance. But it has a violet touch. If you like violets, you should definitely check this one out. It has violet leaves as well, so there is a watery consistency, like an ozonic consistency in here. But in the end, it's kind of like a green, aromatic, spicy, and vanillic at the same time iris experience. Very, very unique. It's unique in a way that it's recognizable once you start smelling it and, you know, learning it a little bit. But then again, when you first smell it, you're thinking it's called Splendiris. Is it all iris? But I'm getting a combination of the iris, as I said, with the violets, the flower, the violet leaves, and carrot seeds. It's great. It's a great scent. This is Splendiris from the house of Parfums DUSITA. If you don't know it, do check it out. Another alternative that recently came out is called Iris Torrefi from Guerlain, from the L'Art et la Métier collection, this one. So this one, to me, as soon as I smelled it, I sensed or smelled something that was inspired or influenced by Dior Homme series, because it hints at it quite a bit. It's Guerlain. Guerlain and Dior are part of LVMH, so their parent company. So are they being inspired by this particular fragrance? It's not identical, but it hints at it quite a bit, and it's inspired by lipstick on a coffee cup. So this fragrance features the coffee note in addition to reminding me of the Dior Homme series, more of the intense and the parfum. But this one has notes of iris, leather, coffee, ambrette, cardamom, vanilla, tea, and amber. The ambrette seeds are definitely existing in Dior Homme Intense and Dior Homme Parfum. This is adding a musky touch to the fragrance, and of course the iris, orris, and then the leather appears in Dior Homme Parfum. So this is definitely something I felt like is influenced by the Dior Homme series. So if you can't find Dior Homme Parfum or Dior Homme Intense, this is one to look at. But one thing I should mention, somebody recently said that this series is being discontinued. Is that really true? I find it hard to believe, but somebody said it's being discontinued by September. I don't know. I mean, they just launched this, so is it really? Are they rebranding the series like they did with the that one collection that went into the beautiful, colorful bottles? I don't know. We shall see. But if you're looking for a great iris fragrance, Iris Torrefi from Guerlain is definitely a great alternative to something like Dior Homme Intense. The next one I'm going to talk to you about is from the house of L'Artisan Parfumeur. This is Bucoliques de Provence. So here, I feel like it's a very, very unisex offering for Iris. And it's an Iris lavender combo with leather. This is inspired by Provence. And I think Iris comes from the south of France. It's known, Iris is credited to Florence and Tuscany usually, but I believe they produce it. But obviously, Provence is known for lavender, and we have lavender, and we also have leather in the south of France. The leather tanneries became perfumeries, kind of a thing I've read. So it's obvious that they're using leather in here as well. But I feel like it's a great, more savory Iris experience, but definitely heavy on the lavender. You can definitely experience the lavender in this one, and it's a powdery lavender experience. So the combination is quite nice. They do complement one another. And as the fragrance is drying, of course, it does get leathery. It's not animalic on me, but it might, maybe little tiny bits, it might come off as animalic, but it's more of a straight on leather experience. But a great scent. I recommend this one as a great alternative because I don't usually see Iris with lavender, and it definitely works here. So this is L'Artisan Parfumeurs Bucoliques de Provence. So those fragrances that we just spoke about are a little older, and then the next two are going to be fairly newer Iris fragrance loves for me that I'm obsessed with. The first Iris fragrance that's newer I'm going to talk about is one that I've spoken about, and I listed it as one of my favorites of 2020. It's Iris Malacan from the house of Maison Crivelli. This one, for me, it's a great buttery iris with a very green galbanum note running throughout it. Lots of it. But the iris in here is, it's Orris, it's not iris, so it's the Orris butter. Vanilla comes in, and I think vanilla and Orris butter work wonderfully together. And even though Orris or iris has a very vegetal kind of a quality, more savory, I think it complements vanilla very nicely. It has mastic resin, and then of course it has galbanum. That's the note I'm obsessed with lately, because as soon as I smell galbanum, it's like wakes me up. It's kind of one of those notes that hits me up there in my nose, and it's like, you know, a wake me up smell, because it's kind of an addicting smell. Really, really wonderfully here with leather, cypress, amber, mimosa flower, and coriander. So it's a spicy, warm, buttery. It's buttery and powdery, and it's nicely contrasted with some sweet vanilla. And of course, galbanum, that's just, for me, it almost seems like galbanum is not supposed to be there, but it works so well, you know? This is just great scent. I absolutely love it. Hope everybody can try this one. I'm obsessed with the way it smells. I like the whole contrast in here. Sometimes contrasts are perfect, and it definitely is here. So that's Maison Crivelli Iris Malacan. And then the last new fragrance I'm going to talk to you about that focuses on iris is Theo Cabanel's Oh La La. I don't know if you guys know this one, but so good. So good again. These two, last two Iris fragrances are brand spanking new. Well, you know, fairly new, but they're both really, really delicious. This one is more of a gourmandish kind of an experience, featuring hazelnuts, white musk, tonka beans, Orris butter, saffron, sandalwood, and tobacco. But this one, you know, the iris in both of these do remind me of one another, but that's about the only thing that reminds me of one another. Both of them are Orris. I keep saying iris, but iris is the flower, Orris is the root. And usually when they say iris, it's the root anyway. They're not really using the flower to make the note or to create the smell. But wow, this is so good. The tonka beans, the hazelnuts with that tobacco, sandalwood, it's creamy, it's bright, it's gourmandish, it's powdery. Just a great concoction, wonderful to wear. I just keep spraying it. Both of these two iris fragrances are the kind of iris fragrances that I'm addicted to. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of iris, or I never was, but now I'm becoming when these two, you know, I sampled these two since they were launched. Just smelling fantastic. So this is Theo Cabanel's Oh La La. If you don't know it, do check it out. All of these latter fragrances are unisex targeted. The men's fragrances that we spoke about early on were definitely male targeted, but I think since they are iris, they're definitely on the unisex side to me. But if you were a woman and you wanted to check them out, if you go to their eau de toilette, it's a little more masculine because it has those aromatic notes. Then if you go to the intense, it gets warmer kind of a thing. Same with this one. I don't have the the Eau de Toilette, which I felt like was a little boring to me, but definitely leans a little more masculine. But then when you go here, it goes into the ambery territory, the warmer territory, and it does get a little more unisex to me. And here as well, the Intense, I think here is definitely on the warmer side. And with Tom Ford, definitely I think I can see a woman pulling this one off. It's musky. Got the patchouli and the Orris in there as well. This one, it's kind of a toss-up. It's a citrus, so you can check it out. But definitely the Dior Homme series, I think Dior Homme Intense and Dior Homme Parfum. Not the new Dior Homme 2020. I think Dior Homme 2020 is really masculine offering. Nothing wrong with the woman wearing it. I'm just saying it leans masculine to me. Anyway, those are my thoughts on these Iris fragrances. Let me know your thoughts on these fragrances. Are you familiar with the 6 ladder unisex offerings that focus on Iris? Let me know. Put a comment down. If you're a fan of the previous fragrances, what are your thoughts about all these discontinuations, rebrandings, redoings, whatever they call it, whatever you want to call them? Let me know. Put some comments down so I can find out. Either way, guys, thanks so much for tuning in today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Otherwise, please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.